If you're a fan of The 100 or The Hunger Games, you may like the new German Netflix original series, Tribes of Europa. But what if you're not a fan of those? Is there anything to enjoy in this series? Almost 50 years after the events of Black December, where just about all technology failed, war rages between the tribes that have emerged from the wreckage of Europe. Three siblings from the peaceful Origine tribe, Keanu, Liv, and Elia, are separated and forced to forge their own paths in a fight for the future of this new Europa. So like I said, this will have very similar feels of The 100, Hunger Games, sometimes a bit of Divergent, and maybe even a little hints at Mad Max. But I guess it's hard to avoid a lot of those similarities when you have something set in a post-apocalyptic world with factions squaring off against each other. So we have four tribes. The first one is the Origine. They are peaceful and they live in the forest. They keep to themselves and they don't want technology. There's the Crimson Republic. They're the military faction. They're wanting to return Europe to what it was, but with them in control. We have the Crows, and they're merciless warriors, and they like to enslave everybody else, and they also like to party. Finally, there's the Atlanteans. Aside from hearing that they are the most technologically advanced tribe, not much is revealed about them. They are the impetus of the story, though. One of their ships crashes, causing everyone to want to get the technology that is supposedly on board. After the crash, Elia, one of the Origine, gets a cube from the Atlantean ship, which now makes him a wanted young man, and the pursuit is on. Elia is quiet and he's timid, and at one point he really reminded me of Ariel in The Little Mermaid. He's got this room filled with all of these forbidden things from the outside world. Just part of your world came playing in my head when I saw his room. Now there's not a lot of story development in this show. We're launched into this world, given just a tiny bit of backstory, and then we're off. For at least the first episode and a half, I'm just experiencing the stuff happening around me. And it's not clear who I should care about or why tensions are the way that they are. And I'm okay if we get story or character development over time, but it does need to come. The pace at the beginning and really through most of this is fast, and I even say it's too fast. Each of the interactions felt rushed, making the story feel jumbled. We bounce back and forth a bunch between different places and characters, which can be fine, but I also need to feel connected to those characters so that the scenes make some sense. I just felt launched from place to place a lot of the time. In addition to Elia, the two other main characters we follow are Keanu and Liv. And I keep wanting to say Keanu, but it's really Keanu. Both of them are from the Origine tribe, and they're all three brother and sister. Now, after some chaos erupts at their camp, the three are separated. Elia is on the run, and he meets Moses, a smooth-talking drifter. And if you're a fan of the series Dark, you will recognize Moses as Ulrich from that wonderful show. Keanu is taken by the Crows, and Liv ends up with the Crimsons. At one point, Keanu gets taken to a place called the Hakar, and their outfits are just so funny. He and the others in that area look like a trash heap boy band. The filming is a bit rough throughout. The handheld camera movements are sometimes really effective to get us up close and move with the characters, and I think it works especially well in the action scenes, but other times, it's just a bit too much. The motions of swaying back and forth and not being locked down, it gets a little distracting. The film texture also feels less cinematic and more soap opera quality. For this type of show, I wanted it to be more film-like so that it really sucks me in with the visuals. And speaking of those visuals, sometimes there are special effects, and while they're barely used, they're pretty decent looking, except for one part in the opening scene. That one was just a little wonky. So this is a sci-fi drama, and the story did begin to suck me in. I didn't ever feel like I was so connected with the characters that I was anxious for their outcomes, though. I was just along for the ride, and I began to enjoy myself by the end. But some of the scenarios are way overplayed. They're campy and stereotypical post-apocalyptic. It's like the end of the world comes, and in the aftermath, you're either living in the forest trying to hunt for food, or you're partying it up at a rave where they have somehow secured booze and drugs. There's just not much in between. And it's pretty hard not to see similarities to other dystopian type movies or shows. And they all kind of borrow from the same material. What sets the great apart from the terrible, though, is how they take what is similar and put a twist on it, or create such amazing characters that you're fully engrossed in whatever is going on, even if you've seen those scenarios before. This one begins to develop something, especially with some characters that I want to get to know more of. And the twist of the cube is interesting, but not much is delivered story-wise in this first season. I think there's too much going on to cram into just 6 episodes. We have 3 main storylines going on, and 2 feel fairly developed, but the third, which felt like it was supposed to be the main one with Elia, doesn't get nearly enough story, which in turn makes what happens feel very rushed. Some of the supporting characters are, let's just say they're interesting. Moses is ridiculous, and Elia recognizes this, which makes it humorous. I mean, he's a likable enough character with quirks to make him endearing, even if he's not on screen too much. Varvara is another. She is brutal, but we do see a slight view of compassion in her, even if it's squelched. And we can see her secretly vying for something she doesn't have, which could set up some great tension in subsequent seasons. Capitan is a quirky but supposedly terrifying leader. I found him just mostly weird and not scary, or really even commanding as a leader. I mean, he's got lots of bravado without backing. As this first season began to finish up, I felt one of the climaxes was very predictable. I mean, it still had a little tension, but you knew it was coming. And that tension didn't last long though, because it was broken by the quickness of the scene. I think this is one you have to want to finish. The interest grew for me as I continued to watch, but I can see how it's just very easy to stop watching and not be pulled in because of the lack of upfront development and even the small amount of development we get over the course of the show. It's just not enough. By the end, I was invested and I was enjoying it, and I'm curious how quickly a season 2 will come because this first one ends with some minor cliffhangers. But just because I became invested by the end doesn't mean that it's an easy one to recommend. There is sex, nudity, profanity, and a lot of violence. I give season 1 of Tribes of Europa 2.5 out of 5 couches. What's your favorite post-apocalyptic show or movie? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for catching with me.